Welcome to another episode of Behind the White Picket Fence, where life is both messy and beautiful. Today I have on Heidi Seaman. She's a registered holistic nutritionist and she works with children and families. Today we're going to go over nutrient-dense foods, where you can find them, how we can feed our souls, and we're going to dip into motherhood and the journeys we go through and how we can give ourselves the food we need to survive things like perimenopause and the different changes we go through so that we can be our best selves for our children. So welcome, Heidi.
Thank you. Thanks, Marjorie. I'm happy to be here. I'm so excited to talk to you.
Yeah.
My favorite thing is to talk about food. So happy to be here.
Oh, I'm so glad to have you. And I am a huge food lover. I follow you on Instagram and I'm always looking at the amazing things you're making. And, coming from, I have a bit of an Italian background in me, so I'm pretty food focused myself and trying to always eat better. I think we're all trying to feed ourselves the best way we can. There's so much information out there.
So much information.
It's a little bit overwhelming, so I'm hoping we can kind of weed through some of that as we break this down. So talk to me, I think you kind of said you really love working with children and families.
That is, I kind of went through a whole evolution of wellness. I worked in a very business-oriented industry. I worked in the film industry for many years.
Oh, I didn't know that about you.
And then it wasn't serving me. It wasn't serving me emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and through a host of reasons, which we could get into a little bit later. I just decided that was it. I was done. I studied Chinese medicine for a few years. That didn't feel like the right fit. And then I got into nutrition. And then I graduated when I was 40 and I started my little business. It's called Project Lunchbox. And I just, at the beginning, I went into schools and community centers and I just talked to kids, caregivers, parents, about ways to incorporate nutrient-dense foods to our kids and help them thrive and what they needed and what they didn't need, and also noticing that parents were really overwhelmed with what to feed their kids, and so I wanted to kind of take away the mystique of it a little bit and also to empower kids to understand why their parents are saying don't eat that or what they can do to make choices on their own.
Right. It's so true because we don't really know. As moms, we can get busy and we can look for convenience and we can sacrifice not supporting our children, especially in an academic environment once they're in school age, that what they're eating is fueling them for learning. And we really want to know, what can we do? How can we still make it easy on ourselves? I know you do a lot of food prep, which is so we should probably touch on that too, because that's helpful.
That was the big thing for me. My kids were coming home, they weren't eating their lunch, or I was getting a lot of pressure to buy hot lunch at school. We're lucky we have a hot lunch program, but it wasn't necessarily the food choices that I would make for my kids. And then very early on, I realized that my son, who's now 19, he was having some behavioral challenges. And I was like, okay, what is it? What's going on? Is it social? Is it academic? What's really happening? And I also noticed that he was reacting every time we'd go to Dairy Queen, let's say, it really wasn't agreeing with his belly. So I kind of started connecting the dots for them and started saying, okay, once you have this, tell me how you feel in about an hour, and then let's just kind of do the math from there. And so I started just working at eliminating dairy from his diet. My two daughters didn't have that issue, and I did notice a change. I noticed a change in how he was feeling physically. And then I started to delve into the effects of sugar, and almost worse than sugar is food dye.
Oh, interesting.
And food dye is in everything. It's in everything from prepackaged snacks to Tylenol. It's really in everything. And so I just started wanting to empower kids, my kids especially, and parents and caregivers to start reading labels.
So is that a good place for us to start? To just start by looking at labels?
Absolutely.
Okay, what should we look for?
Yeah, really good question. So the first thing is the fewer ingredients, the better.
Okay.
Right? You want to eat whole foods. That's just at the end of the day, the less ingredients in anything we're eating, the better it is.
Okay.
Homemade is obviously best, but not everybody can do that, right?
Right.
Busy moms, working dads, kids don't always like what their parents make, and so it's easy to build convenience into our lives.
Right.
So read your labels.
Okay.
Look for things like sugar, of course, seed oils, which would be canola oil, sunflower oil, safflower oil. These things are all really pro-inflammatories,
Okay.
and they're very bad for our children. They're bad for us.
Okay.
They're bad for our kids. And then look for food dyes.
Okay.
Really critically important. Everything you buy in a store has to have a label on it. So if you look at a label, I'm trying to think of an example. I mean, even something as simple as bread. Really, the only thing in your bread should be flour, water, maybe yeast.
Right.
If it's sourdough, it should be starter. If you look at a snack food, look for things like, are they real ingredients? Very often there will be filler, preservatives, oils, things that you really don't need in that ingredient, like a granola bar. Hate to say it. Just be mindful of what it is you're getting, and also be mindful of buzzwords.
Okay.
Things like probiotic or gut healthy. These are all really important, but when you have a probiotic in a food and you also have sugar in that food, it sort of negates the benefit of the probiotic.
Right.
And a perfect example of that would be Activia yogurt.
Oh, okay.
For many years, they had that commercial with
Right.
that dancing belly on
Yes,
TV.
I
don't know if you
remember.
that. And you're like, God, how
Take the 30-day
Yes,
challenge.
exactly.
Yes.
It is so bad for you.
Okay.
Just because of all the sugar.
Right.
So it negates the healthy benefits of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Interestingly enough, I started putting a few bran buds on top of my, otherwise, granola and yogurt.
Yeah.
And then I read the label, and the second ingredient is sugar,
Yeah.
and it's a lot.
So cereal is one of the worst. I hate to say it because, cereal is like the ultimate convenience food for young families, right? You want to make sure that your kids are getting a healthy meal before they go out the door. Chances are they're not eating their lunch at school, and so it is the only thing you can control in the morning, is what they're eating, and cereal is terrible. And the other thing to note is, there's a label called heart healthy. Cheerios, for example, has the heart health label on it. You pay for that. Just because something has the heart health label on it does not necessarily mean that it's a heart healthy food.
Okay.
There are all kinds of ingredients in Cheerios, and I don't mean to pick on Cheerios. I mean, if you look at any Kellogg's cereal box right now, I almost guarantee that you won't recognize at least 10 ingredients.
Right.
And these ingredients are not allowed in the UK, and that's the craziest thing.
Oh my gosh, I don't love hearing this. I feel like, in Canada, I feel typically like we're safe, but it's really shocking when country to country it's varied to that degree.
Yeah. I would say that Canada is better than the US. We are not allowed growth hormones in our meat here.
Right.
But I still, my general rule of thumb is anything you're feeding your family the most of, make it the best quality you can afford.
Right.
So if your kids are eating eggs every single day and it's a great food, and there's so many different ways to use them,
Right.
then make sure you're buying the best quality you can afford.
Okay.
And if you can't afford to buy organic eggs, go to the farmer's market, buy local eggs. If you can't afford or don't have a farmer's market near you, just find eggs that are local.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So kind of know where your food comes from.
Right.
If you're a meat eater, where was your meat grown, raised? What did it eat? You know the old saying, you are what you eat?
Yes.
Not a pretty sight to think about, but if you do think about, if you are what you eat, you are essentially what you are eating has eaten.
Right.
So you want to make sure that if you're eating chicken, that it hasn't been eating animal byproduct.
Right. Right.
So,
It's hard because I think you touched on this too. There's a cost component to this. So there's a budget. So I kind of like what you said, do the best that you can do with the budget that you have.
yeah.
And kind of looking at it from, what would you say is the most top down, most important thing is?
I think most important thing is chemicals.
Okay.
So, you know, for produce, fruits and veggies, if you can, I mean, we're so lucky in Vancouver, even in the winter, we have tons of farmers market. There's this incredible produce market in Steveston, which is actually less expensive than some of the farmers markets around town.
Okay. Ooh, do
And
tell. Where do we find
I know,
it?
it's amazing. It's just kind of at the end if you're going to the movie theaters in Richmond. It's like
Is it
on
by the
Steveston
pumpkin
Highway.
patch?
Yeah, it is the pumpkin patch.
Oh my
yeah.
gosh, I know it. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, Steveston Highway.
Mhm,
Yes.
It's amazing. And
Okay.
they have all the local apples in now. So buy seasonal.
Okay.
Know where your food is grown,
Coming from.
how it was raised, how it was harvested,
Okay.
and just kind of keeping in mind that, you know, we're not necessarily meant to eat strawberries in January.
Right.
You know, if you've ever picked up a strawberry at any grocery store in December, January, February, they're kind of a little bit white.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're like, oh, it's Valentine's Day, I'm gonna splurge. And then you cut it open and they're a little bit spongy and they don't taste very good. They're coming from pretty far away.
Right.
So,
Right.
you know, local, seasonal. For us, my kids eat tons of eggs.
Mhm.
So I buy organic eggs whenever
Okay.
I can, or I buy eggs that are locally raised and grown in Abbotsford.
Okay. Right.
So things like that. And then reading labels, really important. And
Okay.
explain to your kids why you feel that way, right? Like get your kids involved in action. If you take them to the grocery store, tell them to find a food from every color of the rainbow around the perimeter of the store. I feel like everybody has heard this
Yes,
before.
they have. Do not go down the aisles.
Exactly. Stay on the
outside.
outside, right? Where
Yeah.
the produce is, where the dairy, the meat, the fish. These
The
are
cheese.
the
Can we get the cheese? I love the
Yes,
cheese.
You can get the cheese. Yeah.
Right.
But again, it kind of goes back to if you're eating cheese every day, make it the best quality you can afford.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. I kind of like that rule of thumb.
Yeah.
And most of what you're eating, you know, put your resources, financial resources in that spot
Yeah.
to make it the best of what you can.
Yeah.
What you can do.
And then things like, you know, if your kids love Starbucks banana bread, which raises a lot of red flags for me.
Right, right.
It's got so much oil and sugar, and it's really just not very good quality ingredients. Make your own.
Right.
So, you know, sorry, you mentioned batch cooking, and I do a ton of meal prep. And then I separate. So I used to make loaves, banana loaves,
Right.
or zucchini chocolate loaves, which I'm obsessed in. I wanted to bring you that this morning, by the way.
Right.
But my kids ate all of them.
I was just gonna
No, I
say.
made a dozen yesterday,
Okay.
Marjorie, and they were gone this
Can
morning.
we talk batch cooking when you have 3 children or 3 hungry boys?
Yeah.
I go
Oh
to
my
batch
God.
cook, but then they ate the batch in
Yeah.
one day.
Yeah.
It's so frustrating.
It's frustrating, but then double your recipe.
Right.
And put them in the freezer. You know, and when you're making your lunch, you just grab from the freezer, drop it in the lunchbox, and away you go.
Right.
I even got to the point where, I started making my own bread just for, I love it. It tastes better. It's better for you. But even things like on Fridays, I'll either make or buy challah, and then on Saturday morning I make French toast. And sometimes I'll buy an extra bread and just make an entire loaf of French toast and put it in the freezer. That's what my daughter had for lunch this morning.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so
I think we forget that we can freeze things.
you can freeze things.
Oh my gosh, I want a list. We're going to get a resource list from you, and I'm going to put it in the comment section of things that Heidi freezes so that we can go back and look, because it's kind of tricky.
You know, another thing is also, I mean, I know we're kind of talking about families, but as an example, so my mom has some health stuff, and she's like, no, it's okay, I have a can of Campbell's chicken soup. I almost fell off my chair like, Mom, I have a jar of crystal clear, perfect goodness for you. I'm going to bring you a jar of chicken soup. She's like, no, it's okay. But I also think that's a generational thing.
Right. I do too. I feel like our parents' generation was really the generation of convenience. It was Velveeta cheese slices.
Absolutely.
And it was those very quick things. It was Welch's grape juice, and it was how do you feed your kids quickly, because times were changing, and I think the feminist movement was happening, and women were getting into the workforce, and moms were busier, and we really started to look for faster ways to feed our families.
I grew up on Hamburger Helper. I don't know if that was
that was in our house.
Hamburger Helper, TV dinners. And then my mom, if she was going through a diet phase, it was lean cuisine. And like a big night for us was a glazed chicken lean cuisine. That was like a big deal. And then those instant puddings, those little pudding cups, those were big, and they were in a can. I mean, that's what I grew up with, and I didn't know any different. And margarine. My mom always had margarine in the house because it had that heart healthy label on it.
That's right. And in the psychology world, we call that health washing. We're really looking at something and believing what we're seeing without just taking that extra step further. So talk to me about, I mentioned earlier, you said, okay, I'm going to tell you about nutrient-dense foods. Like, what does that mean? Where do we find them? What hits the list on that? What are we looking at?
Proteins.
Okay.
So you should be feeding your kids and yourself protein at every meal.
Okay. So, it's the buzzword right now.
I know.
I'm worried, so I have to admit, I'm worried one day they're going to come and be like, sorry, we were wrong. We meant carbohydrates.
Listen, Marjorie, that's kind of it's always changing, right?
Right.
And it is crazy making. There's this one woman on Instagram, and she's like, okay, so just every day, have protein at every meal. Multiply your grams of protein by stars in the sky.
I love it. Right. Time to buy the Milky Way.
Exactly.
And we've got our new diet.
Still not getting enough, and make sure to eliminate seed oils and no sugar substitute.
Oh my goodness.
So it's crazy.
Last night I had coffee crisp for dinner.
It's okay.
I know. I had that night where I just didn't feel like it.
I have to tell you, my mantras, and you can ask anyone. I've given hundreds of workshops across the city, and I always tell kids, especially, anything in moderation.
Right.
If you make it at home, eat as much as you want, and chew your food till it's the consistency of applesauce.
Oh my goodness.
Really important. Really important.
Lazy chewer over here.
Chewing is important. And I'll get into that. In a second. But
let's go back to protein.
Yeah.
Okay, but what kind of protein? Because I feel like we can quickly skip it. Like, I can throw a scoop of protein powder in the smoothie, but then I hear, well, that's not really great. You're looking for clean protein. And then I'm thinking, okay, what's clean protein?
Well, so again, I mean, back to looking at your labels, right? So read your protein powder labels.
Okay.
I personally love the brand Botanica.
Okay.
Super clean vegan protein. Really agrees with everyone in my family. There's also another brand called Good Protein.
Okay.
Just read your labels.
Okay.
It should really just
we'll
be
put these
a
on
few
the
ingredients.
Okay, we'll put these on the list, by the way, so people have a resource place to go.
And then here's kind of my thing for young families. If your kid is emphatically not eating breakfast, rather than pulling your hair out and freaking out and giving them a toaster waffle, and they're insisting on wanting a smoothie, you can make a healthy, nutrient-dense smoothie at home. Vitamix would be your best friend, or a NutriBullet best friend. I use it for everything.
Me too. I love
And
it.
then put a little bit of protein powder in it. I'm not a big supplement person. I feel that we should get the nutrients that we need from our food.
Okay. So then top 3 protein sources for you.
Well, eggs, hands down.
Yeah.
Cottage cheese.
Oh gosh, huge, right?
Good quality, full fat cottage cheese.
Oh, full fat.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Our
okay.
kids need full fat for their brain. We do too, actually.
Okay.
And Greek yogurt.
And Greek yogurt.
Yeah.
Okay.
And of course meat, right? But not everybody's a meat eater.
That's right. Yeah. Okay, so what meat substitute protein would that be? Tofu?
Tofu is a great source. Nuts obviously are a great source. Buy a really good quality peanut butter, almond butter. I actually love the is it President's Choice from Superstore?
Oh,
It's organic and it's just peanuts.
Oh my goodness, I feel like I need to be writing a list of the foods.
I'll send you a list.
Okay, we'll recap.
As
I listen back, I'm gonna put notes so people can gather.
And then, back to batch cooking, I make egg bites. My kids
I saw that and it
egg
looks
bites.
so good.
They're so good. And you freeze them.
Okay, they're going on the freezer
They're
list.
going in the freezer.
I love this. Okay, I'm so into this.
Make your own. So
right.
I'll add cottage cheese to some. I'll add cheddar cheese to some. I'll add, my big kids love bacon, so I'll add bacon to some.
Okay.
And you can kind of just do a little mix and match and then pop them in the freezer.
I love this idea because I will admit, when I go to Starbucks, I do hit up the egg white bites because they're that quick.
I know the problem with those is it's a great source of protein for sure. You don't really know where their eggs are coming from.
Right.
And you don't really know the other ingredients that are in it. So, if you're trying to eliminate seed oils, unnecessary oils, and poor quality fat, and I'm a big believer in make it at home.
Right. Yeah. We're sorry, Starbucks. We still love you,
know,
but we have to be honest, right?
Yeah.
We need this. We're a nutrition podcast right now.
I just, ingredients matter.
Right.
Ingredients matter, and where your food is coming from matters at the end of the day.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, so then talk to me about what are the small changes, like knowing that we're crazy and saying, like, the buzzword, if it's not protein, it's we're busy right now. You know, everyone feels busy. So what are the small changes that we could make in our crazy, insane lives to say, okay, I know that's kind of a hard question to ask because it would depend on where everyone's at, but give me 2 small changes I can make today.
Do your best to eliminate food dye.
Okay.
It really messes with kids.
Okay.
It really messes with kids. It, like cognitively, hormonally, it's an endocrine disruptor.
Okay.
It's terrible for
What does that mean? When you break that down, because I have a general idea, but maybe our listeners don't know what that means. And sometimes in the nutrition world, this gets confusing.
Yeah, it messes with your hormones.
Okay.
It messes with your hormones. It messes with your brain function.
Okay.
It's linked to at a higher, I'm trying to think of the best way to say this, but more so than sugar, food dyes are linked to behavioral challenges in children.
Okay. I wish I knew this
Course.
before, because I will
too.
say from my from my own personal experience, I remember being at my in-laws years and years ago, and my father-in-law at the time loved these cheesies. Just love them. I think they were Hawkins cheesies that are just those extra crunchy, delicious cheesies. And of course, my kids at the time were so excited. Redheaded identical twins and cheesies, the world's on fire. This is so exciting, right? Yeah. So they're eating their little bowl of cheesies, and then I think that night we ended up sleeping over, and I probably crawled in with one of my little ones, and I think he got up 8 times that night. Yeah. And I remember thinking, this is a child who sleeps through the night, absolutely no problem. And I even now that you're saying this, I feel like I remember my health nurse telling me to buy white cheddar cheese, not the yellow cheddar cheese that people think is natural. So
And along those lines is pay attention, right? Like really pay attention to both what you're eating, what, you know, how it's affecting us, but also how these things are affecting our kids.
Right.
You know, how is everyone's kids feeling for the first few days after Halloween?
Right.
Probably bonkers.
Oh, a disaster.
Disaster.
Halloween's a nightmare for parents.
It's a nightmare for
it
parents.
Really is.
You know, for the first time ever, and my older two kids, whatever, I get called a crunchy mom, but I kind of love it because I didn't grow up with a crunchy mom. I think I always wanted a crunchy mom growing up. You know, it was terrible, but I did a switch with my youngest daughter.
Of course, yeah.
I happened to buy her something that arrived. I bought it weeks ago and I forgot about it, and I was like, do you really want all of that candy? And I know she doesn't, because it doesn't agree with her. And I think just so much of me indoctrinating my kids into like, how does it really make you feel? And they're like, actually I have a tummy ache, or actually I didn't sleep last night, or actually my head hurts, right? So kind of read your labels. So changes, yes, read your labels, know what you're eating, and do your best to make some of their favorite things at home.
Right.
And I know it's not easy. We're working, we're busy. Our kids' schedules are hard to keep track of.
Right.
It's insane. But whether it's a Saturday night or a Sunday afternoon or a Wednesday night or whatever time you could allocate a couple of hours, plot out a meal plan, go to the grocery store with your kids, and say, what do you love to eat?
Right.
Let's make a healthier version of that.
Right. Yeah, and enlist them in it. I always found when my kids were part of the process, they were much more likely to eat the food.
100%.
And I've seen that time and time again. Versus when I just made the meal when no one was watching. And
they don't appreciate it. It's a whole different level.
Absolutely.
Yeah, my youngest one stayed home from school on Friday, and I was like, okay, well, Mom's not playing, like I'm actually working. I'm going to be cooking and baking and doing all my thing for my content, for my own stuff. And she's like, can I help you? And we made chocolate mousse, and we made bread, and we made chicken, and it was amazing. And she was so proud.
Right.
You know, so it's not about stay away from sugar, stay away from chocolate and treats. It's more about knowing what ingredients you're using and make it yourself.
Right.
Like, I don't care if my kids have 3 chocolate zucchini muffins a day. I know what's in there.
Right.
Eggs, Greek yogurt, zucchini, cocoa. I use oat flour. Like,
you know what's in there.
I know what's in there. Great. Have 3 a day.
Right. Enjoy.
Enjoy.
Yeah. Right. I just want to move in with you.
Just eat all I live up the street
right
anytime. I know before my kids come home from school.
We just realized how close we were to each other. I know, but it's so true. There's another mom who doesn't do what you do, but she's really into cooking, and I always say, when are you going to adopt me? Talk to me about sourdough. I know you make your own sourdough, and I will say, when I retire from my own job, I am going to adopt a sourdough starter. I just feel I'm not quite ready, and I'm so envious of people who have the time and can do it and create. I'm going to say create the time and make it a priority, because it's not fair to say have the time. But talk to me about sourdough and what the difference is.
First of all, I mean, I work from home, right? So I have the time, and this is kind of my job. So this is my time. So it's not, you know, I have a client back east, and she just started making sourdough bread, and she's like, I don't understand, it's not rising, and then it's really dense. And I was like, well, don't you work from 9 to 5? She's like, yeah, but I stretch and fold in the morning, and then I do it a few times in the evening. And I was explaining, you kind of can't leave it sitting there all day, like that's what's going to happen. So it is interesting to kind of find everybody's balance, and there are recipes that you could start at the end of the day and kind of do it a few times and let it ferment overnight. It is amazing. It's a labor of love. I'm not going to lie. Yeah, it's a labor of love.
So I'm right to wait till I can truly adopt it.
I mean, you could try it and then see if you like it. I think you'll be hooked. I go through stages. Like this week, I'm like, nobody appreciated my loaf this week. I'm not making it today. And then I kind of like take up my starter and feeding my starter. It's a fermented bread. There's really only 2 ingredients, 3 if you include a little bit of, I use kosher salt. and it's fermented, so it's gut healthy, right? And so that's kind of the other buzzword, but I think it's really important, especially for kids, is what can we do to support our gut? So eating probiotic foods, which are naturally fermented foods, sourdough is one of them.
Right.
It's incredible. It just tastes better. It's not full of preservatives.
Right.
It's made from scratch. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's good. And it tastes amazing with a big slab of butter.
Right. Well, this is another thing we hear. We hear gut health, gut health, gut health.
Yeah.
It's just, it goes on and on and on.
Yeah.
But I'm going to make the assumption that if we're not eating foods with seed oil and dye and sugar, are we supporting our gut, or do we need to do more than just sourdough bread? If I can't make it, I'm happy to buy it. I love finding a bakery that makes it, because that's the shortcut I'll take right now.
Yeah.
It is my absolute favorite.
There are a number of them here in the city that make amazing, true fermented, 24-hour fermented sourdough. Dough Girls at UBC.
Right.
The bakery, the name is escaping me right now, on 4th Avenue.
Well, when you remember,
I'll add them all to the list.
Yeah.
So for sure, yeah,
yeah, you can buy it. But what's another food that we should be eating that would help our gut?
bone broth.
Bone broth.
Yeah.
Okay. I have been big into my bone broth.
Yeah.
That's one thing I have been doing.
I think it's really good. I think probiotics would be a supplement that I would recommend on a daily basis.
Okay.
There's only a handful that I think everybody should take every day.
Okay, we're gonna get that list from you too. Okay, name one or two of them.
Well, probiotics, hands down.
Okay.
I think everybody should be taking probiotics.
Okay.
70% of your immune system lives in your gut. And
so this is why we keep hearing this word.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, especially as we go into winter months, right?
Okay.
You're inside more, people get sick
So
more.
what's your favorite brand of probiotic?
I sell Genestra.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a naturopathic grade probiotic. And it's amazing. My whole family takes it. We've been taking it. The kids were babies. I gave it to them in a powder, in their milk and in their breast milk. Like literally, they've been having it since they were babies.
Okay.
And we all take it. And I think in Vancouver, we all need vitamin D.
Vitamin D. I do take vitamin D.
And again, I love the Genestra brand.
Okay.
It's 1,000 IU. Each drop is 1,000 IU. You'd be hard pressed to OD vitamin D in Vancouver.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's something that I found out I was not, obviously didn't have enough of it, and I've been now adding the drops to my
It makes a world of difference. Yeah. So, and then for kids, calcium, magnesium.
Okay.
I think it's really important. I mean, ideally you want to get that from your food. There are certain.
What food is rich in calcium, magnesium?
Well, magnesium would be cocoa.
Okay. Yay.
Right?
Right.
Good.
That's good news.
Cocoa, I know. Calcium, actually, like one of the most bioavailable sources of calcium is in broccoli.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we think calcium, you need to drink milk, but actually the calcium in milk isn't necessarily absorbable in a lot of people who have dairy intolerances.
Right.
And foods are fortified with iron and vitamin D and things like that. But I think it's best to get it from the source. Almonds, almonds, walnuts, cashews. These are all incredible sources of minerals, nutrients, protein, healthy fat.
Okay. Okay. So, I mean, I feel like we've learned a lot. I already have in my head, I've got a list of things I'm going to put on into our social media so people can reference a lot of the things we've spoken about today, because I have a terrible memory, and we were actually talking about, kind of perimenopause and that stage that we go through as moms while most of us are still parenting, and what we can do to help ourselves through the kinds of foods we eat. So what are the best foods for moms who are in that perimenopause or menopause stage to support us?
I mean, not dissimilar to young kids, right?
Interesting.
So, but I think, first of all, don't deprive yourself. we really need food, right? We need food to thrive and thrive. I would say protein is a big one.
Okay, here's our favorite word.
Here's our favorite word, but it's really important, especially, you know, for women, we should be lifting weights, we need to be building muscle, building bone strength, which is really important as we get older. And so getting your protein in is great for building muscle, great for boosting your immune system. And, you know, the ways that we can do it, because I know my daughters are not really going to want quinoa in their eggs. So, but adding something like quinoa to scrambled eggs is another way of getting protein in. Adding that cottage cheese is really good. You can have a full scoop of a really good quality protein powder in your smoothie. You know what I mean? Like, I wouldn't do that necessarily for young children. But it's okay for us. I would even add like a scoop of protein powder to Greek yogurt and mix in a little bit of peanut butter and drizzle some maple syrup. It's incredible. So getting that. And also healthy fats. Like, you know, we've been indoctrinated to don't eat fat, don't eat fat. We actually need fat.
Well, that's when you said full fat cottage cheese. I kind of went, oh, really? Because you know, I do feel like that from the 80s. I feel like that food pyramid that we saw, and it was like no fat, no fat, no fat.
So it'll be interesting. If you look at a label, let's take Greek yogurt. I love Siggy's. It's my favorite brand.
Another thing that's going on the list. We'll reference it.
And the plain. The fruit flavored ones are very high in sugar. But the plain, and then you can add your own fruit and honey or whatever it is for a sweetener. But I use that in recipes. I use that in smoothies. I use it just in breakfast. Like, it doesn't really matter. It's 19 grams of protein per serving. So it's amazing. But if you look at a full fat Greek yogurt compared to a non-fat yogurt, the ingredients may surprise you, right? Because what are you adding in to balance out what you've removed, right? And so that's, just because something is fat-free doesn't mean it's good for you. Just because something is vegan doesn't mean it's good for you.
I know, more health washing. Right.
You know, it's like, well, what is in the Impossible Burger, right? Read your labels.
Read your labels, you know, and I feel that way too. I feel that especially now gluten-free, we see a lot of it's gluten-free, and then I feel like that translates to it's good for you, but not necessarily.
Not necessarily. Yeah, so watch out for things that are gluten-free or sugar-free, fat-free. You don't necessarily, and sugar substitute is also really bad for you. I know people don't want to hear it. It tricks your brain into thinking it's had sugar, but then your brain and your stomach figure it out, and so it actually creates more of a sugar craving. And sugar in your brain does the same thing that cocaine does in your brain. I don't know the science behind it. I can't explain the scientific reasoning for
but I've
that.
heard this before.
So, you know, be mindful of sugar. When I say be mindful of sugar, I'm talking about actual sugar and, you know, poor quality treats and stuff like that. I'm not talking about the sugar in an apple. Like, I think naturally occurring sugar is totally good and also essential, because you can't deprive yourself of everything, right? And if you're being really mindful and you're desperate for a treat and you're, you know, not allowing yourself to have that, I think it kind of has a negative effect on us.
And I know that for me too, from my own experimenting, when I cut it out completely, I do really, really well. But then if I have just a little bit, then I just want more and more and more. So it's such a fine balance, right? And I've always said I love everything granulated, sugar and salt. It's just been such a, I can see why people say it's so addictive, because it really is. I know, and I don't have a lot of, or many vices, but I would say sugar is definitely one of them.
Have you ever tried like a medjool date? Take the pit out, stuff it with chocolate and
eat
peanut butter.
Well, I should do that.
That's really good.
But then I'm assuming you mean dark chocolate.
I do eat dark chocolate.
Right.
You'll get used to it.
I'll get used to it. I know, and I've done it before, and I'm right on the precipice of doing it again. Because when I do it, I'm so successful. And it's so great, and you do feel better. And I actually like what you said. I just wanted to highlight this for our listeners, because you said, think about how you feel. And I think that's so important, because when I look at the fact that last night I wasn't really feeling like dinner, so I snacked on mini coffee crisps left over from Halloween, and of course I woke up this morning with a headache. But obviously because I didn't feed myself properly last night. And I think that's such an important feedback, because one of the things I've always said is just listen to your body. You know, as a kid, I didn't like milk. I hated milk. And it was because it was telling me it didn't agree with me. And it wasn't until my much later teens that I realized.
I have to say, it doesn't agree with most people.
I hear this over and over. I know. It's
it really doesn't. You know, and the other thing is hydrate. You know, I think.
Okay, tell me this. Say it again.
Right? I know.
Right? So, okay, how much water? I mean, this is something we hear. It's so frustrating, because we hear this all the time, and then I'm drinking water, then I'm running to the washroom, and then drinking more water, and I get annoyed. But
it's so annoying, especially as we get older. Honestly, and that's the first thing I do when I walk into a room is, where's the washroom? But I think it's only going to help you, and it flushes out toxins. I start every single day with warm water. I only drink warm water, actually. Squeeze of lemon juice, warm water. That starts my day. And especially as women, as we get, it just flushes your system. It kind of kickstarts everything. It kickstarts your gallbladder and your pancreas, and starts creating digestive enzymes for what's to come later in the day. And I just think it's really important. And also, sometimes we're not really hungry, we're thirsty, and so you're snacking mindlessly when maybe you should just be having a little bit of water.
And last question, I swear, because we could be here all day.
I could talk about food all day.
I know, and I love it. I feel like I've learned so much that I didn't know, or just solidified my knowledge. And I think, I do think it's such a confusing world right now when it comes to nutrition, and it's nice to hear your voice, because I think you have such a beautiful way of looking at it. But talk to me about coffee, because when you say you start your day with hot or warm water and lemon, I stumble from my bed to my coffee machine, and it is my most anticipated moment. I start to look forward to it the night before. I love my coffee.
I love my coffee, Marjorie. I'm not gonna lie.
I know.
But the acid that it produces in your stomach as the first thing that hits your gut, it's not doing you any services. It's for sure giving you that, there's so many different feels to it, I get it, but from a physiological standpoint, you will do your body good to literally just, before you even get downstairs to hit power on your coffee maker, have a glass of water.
So that's it. And then can you go to coffee? Gosh, thank God.
Give it like 20 minutes and then go to coffee.
Those who know me know I even have a special mug. It's heated. I just love my morning coffee. It's like a ritual.
I agree. I agree. I mean, I've gone through phases where I've cut it out, and I don't know. I mean, if you need to cut it out for different reasons, then by all means. I think there's no one, here's the thing, there's no one shoe fits all for nutrition. And, some people need to eat breakfast before they can have coffee. Some people need it first thing in the morning. I kind of feel like there should be a buffer of just have a glass of water first, and then go to town, have your coffee, enjoy it. Right? Like, enjoy it. There's still enjoy.
We can't take away all the joy.
We can't. Some people can tolerate dairy. Some people eat meat. Some people don't. Like, there's no one right way for every body. You have to really be mindful and listen to your own body and do what's right for you.
I do that. I love that you say that, like, every body is different, and every, all of us have different things that we love and that we are willing to sacrifice or not sacrifice. And I haven't even brought up the biggest one, which is alcohol. And I'm almost afraid to bring that up, not because I'm a big drinker, but because it's so woven into the fabric of our society, and it's such a controversial, although not so controversial. It seems that the latest data on that is that it's just one of the worst things we can do for ourselves.
Yeah, are you asking?
Well, I know. You know what? Okay, let me preface. Let's go back, because I said last question, coffee, and then I threw in alcohol, and I wasn't clear. I was half asking. I was like, am I asking? Okay, let's do this. I'm asking, what are your thoughts on alcohol? Because it just seems, red wine has been debated, yes, no, and the latest research is saying, one drink a week, anything more than that, is bad. But even that, it's emphatically, they're saying this is not something that's good for you.
Yeah, there are a lot of studies on alcohol. I mean, I'm not going to tell you to drink or not drink. I think that we eliminate it for everybody has a different reason for wanting to cut it out of their system, especially as we get older. I mean, I'm sure you can shake off a hangover in your 20s like nobody's business, whereas in our 40s, 50s, and beyond, it's kind of like a little bit harder, a lot harder.
A lot harder.
I think it, I mean, it's a loaded question. I think it really depends. Listen, there's sugar. I look at the sugar in wine. I stopped drinking wine, which I love. It started making me super tired. I love a glass of rosé. I could have a glass of rosé every single day.
Right.
Is it serving me? No. So do I need it? No.
Right.
When I go out, I would have one drink, like a tequila.
Right.
Just try and keep it as clean as possible. And then much beyond that, I know it doesn't serve me. So I think once you start really being mindful of how it affects you, it'll probably fall by the wayside a little bit.
Right. I think kind of going back to that same, thing you said to your children, eat that and then come back and tell me in an hour how
does it make you feel?
Right.
Yeah.
It kind of answers
And
that question.
I think it was Andrew Huberman did a podcast. You're always kind of chasing that first drink, right? You kind of like to have that. You're super happy, first glass of wine, feel really good, and then an hour later, but he's kind of pouring a second glass, and then you're always chasing that feel of the first drink.
Right.
And so I think when you recognize that, that might be the incentive to not. But it's such a personal.
I know, it's such a personal thing. And thank you for even addressing it, because I did have asked that. Okay, I think on that note, we've covered as much as we can cover today. And not to say that we won't do this again, because I think we could probably deep dive into some more of those topics that we did. And I always feel that way when I have someone on, that we can do it again and get more specific. But I can't thank you enough for sharing.
Thank you.
I feel
There's a lot of information.
There was
I'll put together kind of my list of top picks and top things to do and incorporate.
I think that'd be great. I think a cheat sheet would be fabulous. I love a really good cheat sheet for our listeners, and they can just go and even find, if they're local listeners, they can hit up some of the places you suggested. And if you can't do some of the things ourselves, like making our own sourdough, we know where we can get it.
You know where you can get it.
And just remembering what your probiotic suggestion. I think things like that people really appreciate, because there's so much information out there. It's nice to say, here's a quick reference sheet of things we talked about that you can, and here's how you can access them if you so choose to do.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. I was so nice. Thank you so much for coming and recording in my home studio. It's just such a warm and welcoming space, and I'm so glad you're here with me today, and definitely brightened my Monday. And I cannot wait to share this episode.
Thank you. Thank you.
Have a great day, everyone.
Yay.
Yeah, that was great. It was 45 minutes. I thought it was awesome. We touched on, you really
It was a lot.
No, but you know what? It was good.
I feel like I wasn't, I mean, I could just
Everyone
go
feels
off,
that way.
right?
Everyone feels
Right?
that way.
I feel like
No,
Anyway.
every person comes and like, oh, did I ramble? Did I say the right thing? Did I say too much? And I'm like, no, everyone who records says the exact same thing. And I'm like,
I'm going to make you a cheat sheet for sure.
Well, I think even if you don't, when I listen back to it, I'll be able to write down all the things. And I personally want your probiotic.
Oh, I saw them. So yes.
I'm going to get you to